should be live. You should be able to hear me. Let me know if there's any issues in the chat. I just want to very quickly go through the achievement standard, but we've gone through this in class so many times, and a lot of it is kind of unnecessary to go through because you're going to be doing it anyway. So let's just go through the achievement standard or the task for programming. So you've done your plan, and I know some people turned it in late in my class, and I said if you turned it in late you were going to get not achieved, but I think considering everything that's going on, if you've turned it in, I will mark it, regardless of when you've turned it in. So to those students that have still not turned it in, and there are 4 of you, hopefully you see this video, turn it in, and I will mark it. I'll go through it. You might only get achieved, you might get not achieved, but it's better than not knowing and not attempting it. In fact, you can't not attempt it, so you're going to turn it in. This is the task for the programming though. The due date for this is a little bit flexible. Ideally, I'd like it in by the end of the holiday. We had originally intended it to be due at the end of this week, and then we were going to start Blender, but it's a little bit difficult to do that when most of you may not be at school. Well, none of you should be at school, but we may not be back for a little while, so we're going to just take a little bit of a different approach to that. I'm fine with when you hand it in. I would like it in at the latest really before the end of the first week of school, which we will still be off. So we'll still be off. It's about, I think that's about the 17th of April. So that's plenty of time. And in that first week back, I'll be doing, or probably during the holidays, I'll do some videos on this adventure library. Again, just to help you through it, to answer any questions that you may have, and so on. So the task. Your program has to use variables storing at least 2 different types of data. That's fine because you've got variables storing classes such as rooms, items, which is also a class, so that's not 2 different types. Although classes are actually their own data type. But you've also got current room, you've got a whole lot of different variables in there, and you will be using text, like you might be storing player's name, etc. This one's fine. You're going to be using multiple variables to store different types of data, not an issue. You're going to use sequence. You cannot write a program without sequence unless it's 1 line long. Selection, you've got if statements in there. Iteration, you may not have loops. You may not have actually coded the loops explicitly, but you do have a loop within there. And in previous standards, this has been clarified that you can use a built-in loop to work with this. So what I mean by that is you might have for I in something, for I in range, and that's fine. You've covered the loop. You might have while X is false, etc. But even just the bit in Adventure Library that says start puts the game into an endless loop. It puts the program into a loop where it constantly reads in player input, which covers the next part, takes input from a user. It produces output in the form of text. It uses data stored in collections. Now, bags are what are known as a set. And a set is the same as a list, except it can only have unique items in it, or unique values in it. So you could never put 2 of the same item in a bag in Python. And user-defined methods, we've got plenty of those. Okay, so every time you do an @when and then define a player function or a player activity like look, you're defining a method underneath that, def look, done it. Use 2 or more of the following of these. Using methods, functions, control structures effectively. I'd say that you'd be doing that. You'd have a hard time not to do it. You'd have to really try hard to not do that, I think. Checking input data for validity. Now, because we're using a third-party library, it actually does it for us, which is really good. And if there's any documentation required, which I'm not sure if I've actually specified, you can mention that. AdventureLib does actually check everything the player's typing in. You cannot make it crash. You'd have a really hard time making Adventure Library crash. Correctly handling expected, boundary, and invalid values. It should do. So invalid values should return with something like, I don't understand that. Expected should do what it does, like look should print the room or whatever you've decided to do. boundary cases, there may not be many boundary cases in this case, although changing the rooms is an important one. Displaying the exits to the room if there are exits, or displaying what is in the player's inventory in a way that makes sense could be considered a boundary case in here. If they've got nothing in their inventory and you type inventory, then it shouldn't print you are carrying, it should print you are carrying nothing because they're not carrying anything. So things like that. And this is bumping it into merit and excellence with these bits here. So you may not need to cover all of these to get achieved. Using constants, variables, and derived values in place of literals. There's two of more, so you don't have to do all of those. Lastly, robustness and flexibility. I don't think there's any issue in covering those things there, and I've talked a little bit about them before. So that's it there. This assessment requires evidence of testing. Okay, all this stuff should be evident in your program. There is one thing that I haven't really hit on a lot in class, and that is code commenting. You do need to have it. You do not need to have excessive code comments. So if I load up this task here, you'll see that this example that we built, it doesn't have a lot of code commenting. It does have some, but not a lot. Okay, so all that you really need is above each function, describe what that function does if it's not obvious, okay? If it is obvious what it does, then just describe what the function does. So something like changes the current room. I did have a silent keyboard as well, and now I had to unplug that to plug in my memory stick with this stuff on. And so back to the old mechanical one, or the good mechanical one. Look at item, shows the item description to player. Stuff like that is simple enough. And down here, if it gets a little bit more complex, maybe you can add some of your own stuff in there. It's also important for me to mark, because maybe there's some bugs in your program when you turn it in and you couldn't get it to work, but I can fiddle with it and see what you were doing, and maybe there's just one little line that you got wrong, you spelt something wrong, and I can fix it, and that's not a huge problem. As long as you've got testing in there. I can't rewrite all your code, but what I mean by that is if you've got an indentation error and that's the only thing, then that's not a big deal, because I would just point it out to you in class anyway, which I can't do at the moment. So things like that are not a problem, but you do need to have testing, okay? So if you submit your program and it's obvious that you haven't tested it, then you're going to get not achieved. Some questions. So I had some people ask some questions. Silent would be good. Can you not hear? I hope you can hear. I'm not sure what that comment means. Miss White, are you able to clarify what you mean by that? And the keyboard. Oh, of course. No. This mechanical keyboard is much better. If you want a good mechanical keyboard that doesn't cost a lot, just go to the warehouse, get their $50 eBlue keyboard. This video is sponsored by thewarehouse.co.nz. Go and get an eBlue keyboard from them. It's pretty good, and it lasts, well, it's lasted for ages now. No, I haven't. I'm just about to cover that, Matthew. So Python. Okay, yes, you have to use Python. You don't have to use Sublime Text, and you don't have to use PowerShell. Okay, this is how I've done it at school, and there are valid reasons for doing that. I think that learning that kind of back end of how things used to be, and this is how a lot of people do it now anyway as well. So most programmers would not use the built-in idle text editor. So if I type idle, this here is the one that comes installed when you install Python. So Python is the programming language. This is idle, and you can create a new file here, and then you can type your program in there and click run. So if I type print 5 times 5 and then run that, it's going to ask me to save it, and I'll just save it wherever. And then it prints out 25. So it's all kind of self-contained. The problem with that, I can't really go into explaining what the problem with that is at the moment. For your project, it will work fine. There's no issue if you want to use idle. But if I want to use PowerShell, I have to have Python installed. So if I go hgrc Python, and once you start doing this, it's actually a lot faster than doing the other way. So I'll just, I think it's called, what's my program called? Adventure.py. So Python adventure.py. What this is doing here is you are in timeout. I wanted to do that all morning. Python adventure.py, and what this line of code here is doing is it's saying run the adventure.py file through the Python interpreter. If you don't have Python installed, this line will give you an error. Okay, it'll say Python's not installed, or I don't know what Python is. So Python says run the Python interpreter and load all the code in this file into that Python interpreter and then interpret it, which gives me an error. That is because I don't have AdventureLib installed. So pip install AdventureLib, and pip for some reason is not working on my computer. I have restarted my computer since last night, so I'm having this issue here. I'm not entirely sure why it's not working. It was working, but since I uninstalled Python and then reinstalled Python, it hasn't worked for me. If you're getting this error, you can use the repo.it, and this actually works really well. So I should already have one here, new folder, assessment, yep, I did create it yesterday. And so I talked about it in the video yesterday doing this, but what's happening here is when I hit run, it's still running it through a Python interpreter. And now those questions, I can see your question there, Caleb, you're gonna have to email me that specifically and I can take a look at it, okay? So what I would like you to do, if you are having errors with your code, then take some time to kind of write up or screenshot, or send me the whole file. Actually, it's easier if you send me the whole file, because if you just send me a screenshot of where you think the error is, it may not actually be there. It may be something earlier that's causing the error, such as a variable name that's misplaced, or you've forgotten a bracket somewhere else. It could be something like that. It's usually something pretty small. What I am going to do tomorrow is another live stream, but this time it's going to be about setting up a project. So if you haven't started yet, tomorrow tune in and I'll be talking about setting up an AdventureLib project. I'll make sure that I have AdventureLib installed on my computer. I'm really surprised that it's not, and we'll go from there. You can the code, no, just send me the Python file, the .py file. So you can just send me that in an email. If you're not sure how to attach an email, so you can go, actually this might have been, no. So if you're not sure how to attach an email, attach a file, you click this button down here, attach files, and it will let you select the file that you want and attach it. And then I'll get that file. So, and then I can reply to you. I probably won't send you back a fixed version. I'll send you back just either a screenshot of me fixing it, or I'll answer it tomorrow as well in the text. Yeah, that's fine. If you send it as a text document, that's fine. That's all right. I can still run it. So the .py file is just a text document. That's all it is. It's just a text document with Python code in it. And when we put .py on the end, it just means it's letting Windows know that this is a Python file. That's all it's doing. So it is just text in it anyway. So that's fine. Yep, cool. I'll answer that one tomorrow. How to make a player start with an item. I can talk about that tomorrow. I'll actually just write some of these questions. I don't need to write it down there in the chat. Technology, it's pretty good. So I will answer your question tomorrow, Radden. Any other questions that you have, either put them in the chat, that's fine, even when the video ended, and I'll be able to see those. If there's no other questions now though, then I can just finish up and then I can kind of get ready for tomorrow. So really today I just wanted to go over that, answer the question about PowerShell and whether you need to use it or not. You've done it at school. If you're using a Mac or Linux, you should have it really easy. You should be able to open something called Terminal. Look in the Spotlight, type Terminal. But it may be a bit more complex for you to actually find your files. So yeah, you may have to do a little tutorial on how Terminal works. I think the only major difference is ls instead of dir in terms of what we've done. CD for change directory still works, all that. Teague, I think we've got your email. I think it may have been forwarded to me, and I think I've replied to that. But I'm going to end the stream here if there's no other questions, and then tomorrow, same time, 11 o'clock, and I'll go through creating an AdventureLib file from scratch. Yeah, you can just use REPL if you're on Mac, that's fine. In fact, you can use it if you're on Windows as well. You can use it. You can use it no matter what you're on. If you want to sign up for it, it's free. It works pretty well, and the only thing you need to do is make sure you get that Adventure Library file in there by copying and pasting it. Cool. And I'm just waiting. I'm just trying to check on the delay. It looks like it's about 7 to 8 seconds. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. Ending.